G'day everybody, my name is Elliot Waters and you're listening to the Dysregulated podcast. As always, thank you for tuning in. Today's episode, well, the theme of today is anxiety. Generalised anxiety disorder has decided that today is its day, as opposed to yesterday where the depressive side of my psyche took the reins. Now, it's very interesting because today is very much a carbon copy of yesterday. And once again, I don't think I've done anything consciously to bring on this mood state. These forces within my psyche are just doing their own thing, and I do not have conscious control over a lot of aspects of them. So I woke up today, I did not think, I reckon today, let's be anxious today, we'll tick that off our list. Definitely not, and I certainly didn't wake up yesterday wanting to be depressed either. These mind states are just sort of thrust upon me without much warning, and we are left to deal, or I am left to deal with the consequences. It is a real different feeling though, whereas yesterday was, depression I always think of as like this dark fog that descends, it's cold, everything slows down, everything's grey, there's not much light, all that rumination and stuff. I always imagine that as like really dark, sort of misty, just this fog that you just can't lift and can't get out of. Whereas anxiety to me is more like a storm that's on your tail and lightning strikes are going and you got to keep running or else it will take you out. So two very different sort of phenomena. And it's even worse when they combine, which happens a lot. Thankfully, that's not the case yesterday or today. But still, on their own, depression, anxiety, big problems. So yeah, but depression, like I said, it's like a fog to me, It's like this fog that you just can't get away from. Whereas the anxiety is this storm that is chasing you down. And that's why I think anxiety wears you out so much, because you're in fight, flight, or freeze mode. And that uses up a lot of energy because the adrenaline's pumping, the cortisol and other stress hormones. You are in many sense, your body feels like it's in a running race. You've got high heart rate, sweating, all that sort of stuff. It's very taxing on the individual, is anxiety. Whereas depression is too, but I think depression more tricks you into feeling lethargic. It's sort of, dulls everything down so you don't have that sort of that drive throughout the day to achieve things and get on with it because, you're thinking everything's going to turn to crap anyway, so what's the point? So I feel like depression sort of tricks somebody into feeling lethargic, whereas anxiety does physiologically wear you out, that's for sure. And it's hard to manage because, like I said, I didn't wake up today picking anxiety to feel like. I wake up and sort of think, okay, how are we feeling? What's that? Negative emotion. And then, it may flow from there. Or I'll wake up and go, hey, feeling pretty good today. Let's go out and smash it. And I really crave those days. It's just that doesn't happen all that often at the moment, which is a shame. And it's hard also because I don't really have an answer to these mind states. When they're just thrust upon me like this, when these subconscious sort of processes are producing this sort of awareness and this negativity in our awareness, at the moment, I just do not have the answers on how to cool myself down and get back to some sort of baseline. And that's where therapy is going to help, I think. So obviously, I need to get back to therapy. I'm working on it. I'll tell you soon, I'm going to have news on that, I promise. But there's also a lot of routines and stuff that I'm still not doing very well that you've heard me talk about. I just got some new running shoes delivered, so obviously now I'm going to be running marathons again, which is great. But I'm not meditating quite enough as I should be, and, there's probably a few things that I should do every day which provide protection from these mind states that I'm probably not doing. And I'm probably leaving the door ajar, and depression, anxiety, BPD, OCD, whatever it wants to be, is slamming that door open and running straight in. So, I'm not that oblivious to the fact that there's more that we can be doing. But once these really sharp sort of downturns in mood, whether it's the depressive side or ramps up with this anxiety, by the time I sort of realise that we're in the throes of it, it's sort of a bit too late then to intervene. So I've got to come up with a plan where we can intervene early, and we need that awareness and insight into how we react to things to be able to say, right, this is the beginnings of a depressive episode. We need to act now. Boom. Or this is the beginnings of an anxiety panic attack. Quick, meditate, go. And with the depression, maybe go for a run. Example, get some sunlight, whatever. So it's really annoying though, because, life doesn't just, stop and wait for you to get out of these, or me to get out of these mind states. Like I said, I'm at work today and I've got to keep working. Got to put food on the table. I've got to pay for therapy somehow. So although I'm in this anxious state, I still got to figure out a way to push through and get the job done. And I will, because, I've proven many times before that I can somehow suffer through, put on a happy face and get through it. But, it takes a lot out of you, and this isn't the way you sort of want to proceed if you can help it. We don't want to be doing this depressive anxiety sort of thing or the rest of them. But I need to be a bit more aware about when these things pop up, what I can do to fix it, and then try and mitigate it in the future. But yes, so there's a bit of a contrast between the depressive sort of feelings of yesterday and the anxious sort of feelings of today. But the actual days themselves, on paper, carbon copy. And that's where it's so confusing. It's like, okay, all right. If I was anxious yesterday and today, I could say, well, the days were the same and, that equals the same result. But, there's no linear sort of relationship or association here. So it's something that's going on internally. It's not my external environment, because it's the same, at least as much as I can control it. And so it must be something internal. And this is something I really need to drive into and have a look at what levers are being pulled and see if there's some sort of pattern, or at least a way to pull the levers back into the direction I want to pull them. And that, I think, is going to be in therapy, because I was talking yesterday, I think, about sort of general depressive feelings and specific. So today, again, there's no specifics. Nothing has happened. There's no catalyst. This is just that general sort of feeling that just hangs around and won't leave me alone. And I think medications are the answer for this particular part of my negative psyche, I think. And for the more specific stuff, I guess real world, although this is as real as it gets, but I guess external sort of environment stuff, I think that's where therapy and psychological interventions will help. And of course, there's a bit of overlap between both. And the thing that scares me a little bit, though, is the fact that I don't think these medications are quite sorting this out properly. So they didn't do the job yesterday with the depression stuff, and they're not doing the job today with the anxiety stuff. So both are still getting through the front gate, and the medications are not stopping them from running wild. It's a bit of a worry. But anyway, this is all a work in progress, and you guys are going to be with me every step of the way to see how on earth this ends up and what we need to do and how we do it as far as getting beyond these sorts of feelings is concerned. The good news is, go back a couple of months ago, there would be specific things that I've done which have caused these things. And, there'd be, although I'm not maybe doing as much of the good things that I should be, like the meditating, running, whatever, mindfulness stuff. What is true, though, giving myself a bit of credit, is that we're not doing as many of the dumb things that we used to do, like staying up late and, not eating properly and, just things like that, scrolling on my phone constantly and just, being zonked out. We're not doing as many of those things as we were. So that's great. But we need to really work on the other side of the coin, which is the more positive interventions. And, that's my challenge moving forward. I've spoken about routines and stuff before. It is in habit building. It is still a huge priority of mine. And it's a work in progress. It's hard. And it's hard because, today's very much about anxiety. There's no real sort of depressing feelings at all. Today I feel, as far as that side of my mood goes, I feel quite buoyant actually, but it's coupled with this fear that just will not go away. But the fear and the anxiety also then in turn drives, a bit of the ADHD stuff as well. So my attention, I've noticed, is not particularly good today in particular, because that adrenaline's just pushing us into this heightened hyperarousal state where there's no chance of us focusing as well as we want to, because there's just too much going on. There's too much head noise, and we're constantly thinking that there's something up ahead that's going to jump out at any moment and knock us off our feet. So there's a bit of interplay there too. So with the depressive stuff, I feel like it drives a bit of the BPD sort of self-esteem sort of thoughts. They tend to hang out together and really work together to try and bring me down. Not successfully though. And ADHD and anxiety, I think there's a bit of a link there too. And they sort of tend to couple and then work together to try and bring me down, but also aren't successful. So I'm going to explore that a bit more in future episodes, I think, the sort of relationships that some of these disorders I've got have and how they sort of operate with each other and complement each other, I suppose, in a very negative way. But today I really want to stress the point that, today's much like yesterday. There's no real difference. I'm back in the car recording. You guys are in the trenches with me like you were yesterday. Instead of the depressive thoughts, though, it's this anxiety and fear that we're dealing with. But it's the same day as it was yesterday, and it just goes to show how these mental illnesses will just do their thing. If I was in control, conscious control of these cognitions and emotions and thoughts and feelings, I wouldn't be feeling like this. And that's the thing. People with mental illnesses, we're not putting this on. This is as real as it can be. Like my heart rate, my sweating, my trembling hands, that is physical evidence that these brain processes, these negative brain processes are occurring, and it's as real as anything else I feel, definitely. So yeah, that's what I'm contending with today. Today is all about anxiety. Just one last little point though, and this goes to, there's sort of nuances that can be found with this whole thing. So today's very much about anxiety, but it's not about social anxiety. My social phobia, which is still a key component of my psyche, unfortunately, and how it manifests itself for me. But it's interesting. The social component isn't the problem today. It's just that generalized anxious feeling. So I don't know. I'm going to have to meditate on that a little bit more and dig in a bit further and try and explain that relationship, or lack of in this case as well, because that's very interesting, I think. This isn't just a blanket, okay, everything's dialed up, all your disorders, everything is just going to be a terrible day. It's actually quite specific. And yesterday's was specific as well in the depressive sense. But today is when it comes to anxiety. But there's not that social component that I would have thought would usually occur in tandem with the generalized stuff. This is sort of the first time I've really, in this sort of frame of mind where it's more specific, really dived into it, meditated on it, and sort of figured out what's going on, or trying to figure out what's going on, because it's a scary proposition. So I'm already anxious as it is, and doing that sort of reflection is even more anxiety provoking. That's why it's so difficult to do, and that's why I'm doing it here on the episode, because I'm telling you, I feel like you guys, like I said, yous are in the trenches with me. Yous are sitting on the back seat, and I'm in the front seat recording here in my car. We're all on the same team. So a lot of this episode has been me musing out loud at what the hell could be going on. So thank you for coming on that journey with me. And I hope you did gain some insights from today's episode too. So today it's anxiety. Yesterday it was depression. The days, though, almost carbon copies of each other. What is going on? I do not know yet, but I am going to try and find out. Now, I've got to get back to work. I'm going to do some box breathing. And I'm going to try and just do a little bit of mindfulness quickly, and we'll see how we go. Fingers crossed, we'll be okay. We always get through it. I've got to keep remembering that. We always get through it, Elliot. It might not feel like that we do, or we will, but we do. Keep on keeping on. So I better get back into it. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time here on the podcast, the Dysregulated podcast.